Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from October 17th to the 23rd. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution, especially of the US cannabis industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and then take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. But we're going to start with some news as we're getting more calls for the Safe Banking Act to finally pass, as it should have been passed 18 months ago, and it's had the votes, but, better late than never. As Marijuana Moment reports, NAACP calls for immediate passage of cannabis banking bill and pushes for legalization in new resolution. Now, obviously, pushing for legalization is a big ask, but an incremental step with the banking bill would be something that we'd like to see, as NAACP wants Congress to leverage the momentum behind incremental reform and quickly pass the Safe Banking Act. Now, we've wanted it to pass for a while. Not going to share much more of the story. You can grab the whole link below, but let's hope that these calls to action actually have some sort of a consequence from now into the lame duck session, as well as we move through January, and we'll see who takes over in the new year, depending on who wins in November. And so with that, this comes from Karen Boykin-Towns, who I believe is the vice chair of the NAACP, so she's just commenting on that post that we saw, and again, this post is actually from the 21st, so yeah, it's as of yesterday, but she's obviously putting her support behind it, which we love to see, and even tweeting out Senator Schumer, hey, do your job, Chuck. Let's bring safe banking to a vote and help those harmed by the war on drugs to find opportunity in legalization. And so a whole memo written up, economic development. One, NAACP supports access to banking for licensed and regulated cannabis businesses with fair terms and rates for black-owned social equity licensed cannabis businesses, and will continue to fight for restorative justice. Whatever needs to be said in order to get the Safe Banking Act to pass, as it is sound policy and will make America no doubt safer. You can pause to read if you want to get all of the information added in here. But nonetheless, we love seeing these calls to action, and again, hope that while we still have essentially a 50-50% chance like we did last year, it's either going to end up passing or not. The momentum is building, more money has likely been lobbied for the cause than ever before, and hopefully it's enough to offset. And lastly, just to touch on the same point, Todd, thanks for sharing, as Rep. Ed Perlmutter, who introduced the Safe Banking Bill in 2019, told The Hill Tuesday there's a lot of activity around the legislation, which some senators have referred to as Safe Banking Plus amid ongoing negotiations. And so, as Todd says, 19 days. More on this article from The Hill. So this does sound nice, and we love to hear it. Is still more talk after 18 months of broken promises. And so all we're looking out for now going forward are actions. And so again, we don't know what's going to happen, but seems the momentum is building, so plan accordingly for your own situation, as safe is still likely a when, not if scenario. And so with that, just wanted to share this one from Tom Angle, highlighting again the principle that states' rights should supersede federal rights, and that is why we should obviously abolish the outdated cannabis laws and allow states to make their own laws in relation to how they want to do that. As the U.S. Court of International Trade, for the second time recently, overturned Customs and Border Protection in a cannabis equipment case, finding that state-level cannabis legalization provides an exception to the federal ban on importing drug paraphernalia. So something different related to moving paraphernalia around, but regardless, highlighting that the state-level laws should supersede any sort of federal overhang, and this just again sort of reiterates the idea that at least the court seems to be behind, putting states' rights before federal, and why we ought to finally end cannabis prohibition once and for all. So more on that article if you wanted to check it out. Well, this one comes from The Hill, and it is an opinion piece from someone named Paul Armentano, and I don't actually know who it is, but just have to share, as of course The Hill wants to make this blatantly clear. The views expressed by contributors are their own and not the view of The Hill. But this is an opinion piece on healthcare, and in my point of view, as someone that has used cannabis and seen the benefits from it, I can't take anything healthcare seriously if there's not necessarily, the different takes and then the cannabis take and how that can relate to it. Regardless, I digress. Cannabis must be removed from the Controlled Substances Act. I agree. And while I've been speaking this for a very long time, I'm not going to get into this, but just invite you to read through it if you wanted to read this opinion piece from Paul Armentano, because obviously it makes a lot of sense. And with 37, I think, states with medical cannabis, well, to be a Schedule I substance that claims that there's no medical value, high potential for abuse, and doctors cannot even recommend it, which is, again, just false based on the reality of what's going on in many states. Just gets more into it if you don't know a lot of the points and want to learn more about why cannabis ought to be removed completely and descheduled so that the plant is given back to the people. So on to states news. We've got this one from Nats Fertig, who writes for Politico. Oklahoma, the current Wild West of medical cannabis, according to her, I guess, holding a special election on March 7th to determine recreational cannabis legalization legalization. So big news out of Oklahoma, and so while this will not be on the November ballot, unfortunately, because prohibitionists did create a lawsuit there and ended up stalling it and then getting it taken off, it seems Abigail Ogle saying new Oklahoma will vote on rec cannabis March 7th, 2023 from an executive proclamation from the executive department of the state of Oklahoma, possibly. So I do apologize if I butchered that, or if you know any more information on this than what I covered, feel free to comment. But more on this here if you wanted to pause to read. And while that's not very clear, I guess I'll just show you this section if you wanted to pause to read. But again, good to see another state taking initiative and putting an effort to end cannabis prohibition and legalize rec sooner than later. So that'll be March 7th of next year. While MJ Biz Daily shares that Detroit regulators received 90 applications for the 60 rec cannabis business licenses available in the city's first phase of licensing. And so great to see Detroit finally allowing cannabis businesses to open up there. So great to see that there is demand for the citizens of Detroit to want to get in on this opportunity and try to supply the rest of their citizens with legal cannabis. And so while this does take time, good to see Detroit taking the steps to get it going and obviously seeing more applicants than spots available. And so with that, on to Office of Medical Cannabis Use. Looking at Florida for this past week, following dispensing locations were approved by the department from the 17th to the 21st. It seems just one this week, Trulieve opening another location in Land O'Lakes. And so with that, looking at the qualified patient count for this past week, it increased to 759,731, which represents a week-over-week increase of 1,205. So down a little bit from last week where we saw over 2,000 week-over-week increase, which we love to see again, as that was sort of as outside of peak seasons in summer and winter months, that is typically the growth rate that we see. But regardless, they are adding more patients week-over-week, slowly but surely. And so looking at dispensations for October 14th to the 20th, we can see all the MSOs that operate in the state, the number of dispensary locations that they have active, and then we can see the number of milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower. So all the numbers for all the MSOs across the board. And happy to share with that Pierre Gilles, who updates this Florida flower market share comp sheet, highlighting the top 8 MSOs using the data from this resource here. And so this is updated as of yesterday, October 21st. And so another easily digestible visual to take that information in differently and highlight who has the most market share and whether they're maintaining or losing it week over week. So we got Trulieve at number 1, Curaleaf number 2, Liberty Health Sciences backed by Air Wellness number 3, Move backed by Verano number 4, Terra Wellness, Grow Healthy, Fluent, and I do apologize, I forget which companies are specifically backing these ones, while lastly Sunnyside is backed by Cresco Labs. And so more information there. All links will be below. While just wanted to share this one from Marijuana Moment as it highlights some interesting news out of DC, where while we know that DC has passed that rider, I think in 2014, to launch a legal adult use market, for some reason they still have not done it for the citizens of DC nearly 8 years later in 2022. What they've done as a workaround is to basically allow any citizen of DC to sign up as a medical cannabis patient, and that way you can get medical cannabis without having to go to a doctor, and that's how they've worked around that unfortunate delay that they've been facing. But sure enough, they're not excluding tourists out of this, which is great and might make anyone want to visit DC that much more, as apparently DC lets tourists get medical cannabis without doctors. So essentially same thing. Now tourists, not just citizens of DC, can just sign up as a medical patient and then get medical cannabis without having to go see a doctor, and that is the current workaround we're also seeing in some states. And so wild, kind of ridiculous, but that is where we sit today. And so with that, just a few more stories from Marijuana Moments newsletter. Australian drug decriminalization approved. Again, decriminalization is fine. We don't want people obviously being charged for it or going to jail. And obviously the war on drugs was a failure, and we should end this completely. However, it's better to launch a legal adult use market so you don't allow black market operators to thrive. But I digress. Well, the link is below if you want to grab it. There's a few more stories on a new congressional researchers cannabis report, which no doubt it doesn't tell us something that we already didn't know. A story on Missouri cops frowned on for legalization ad, and then a banking poll. And so with that, quickly, just wanted to add this in because I forgot to add it to the beginning of the story. And while it's a poll, it doesn't necessarily mean much. It does get a gauge on how the public feels about, again, ending cannabis reform and taking incremental steps as opposed to continued delays and broken promises. And so with that, Todd Harrison, thanks for sharing. The Marijuana Moment article will be below, but 2 in 3 Americans want Congress to pass cannabis banking reform, American Bankers Association poll finds. And so if they're spending money to poll Americans and get their opinion, clearly the bankers want this done, and better late than never. The time would be now, or the best time ideally would be now. 66% of respondents said they favor the proposals, including 37 who strongly support them. So just wanted to add this in as I did miss it before. But on to some more state stories. Tom Engel sharing new poll finds that 60% of Delaware voters, including 73% of Democrats, support legalizing cannabis, despite Democratic Governor John Carney's veto of a cannabis legalization bill earlier this year. And so while this does sound nice and might hopefully lead to some sort of reform push, it is still just a poll, and I just can't help but find it kind of ironic that we've got a majority of people that live in Delaware that claim to be cannabis friendly and might understand the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition, yet they voted in a Democratic governor who's sort of working against the best interest of the people by not passing a cannabis legalization bill and launching an adult use market. So interesting, but nonetheless, it seems to be the data behind this poll here if you wanted to check it out. Link below as well for more on that. While PA Tom Engel shares Pennsylvania's Board of Pardons is allowing the 3,500 people who applied to receive relief under the governor's cannabis pardon project to fix any errors on their submissions so that they aren't denied over small technicalities. How kind of them. And still, regardless, happy to share a step in the right direction from those in Pennsylvania to help correct the wrongs of this failed war on drugs. While on to some MSO news, Curaleaf celebrates opening of Frederick, Maryland dispensary. And so happy to share, company continues to expand their retail footprint and growing their locations in Maryland to a total of 4, it seems. And so the new dispensary opening follows the final license transfer of a herbology retail location previously acquired in the Grassroots acquisition. And so Curaleaf Frederick opens its doors to patients at 9 a.m. on October 19th, as of Thursday, I believe. And so more information on the dispensary here, but good to see them continuing to expand while it's still cheap for them to do so, as we are still in the early innings. And while it's frustrating to hear that, it should be reassuring a little bit. And so with that, just wanted to share some color from Boris on the evolving German regulations. So I do apologize on my Wednesday video. I sort of delivered the story with the tone that this would be the legislation that they've written up. Obviously, it was just a draft, so I do apologize if I wasn't clear on how I deliver that story. But any new information or snippet that we get about Germany, I just want to share it so that we, can take it in and add it to what we already know and hopefully make better decisions around what we're getting. But this is from Boris Jordan. The draft rules that leaked are not representative of what will be in the final draft. Import will be an important component of the market, as German domestic production could not supply even 1% of demand, and then taking care. So let this be a reminder that it seems quite funny that the German government has a lot of beef with PR firms and media, as for whatever reason it seems like the media just keeps publishing stories and the German government has to be like, no, this isn't necessarily accurate. But regardless, let this be a reminder that this is a constantly evolving situation. And so as much as we want it to happen right away, it is going to happen. And so that's reassuring. Still a what-if scenario, much like the Safe Banking Act, right? And so all we can do is plan accordingly. With that, Air Wellness introduces its national portfolio of brands to New Jersey menus. As they announced the rollout of several new brands from its national portfolio into the new Jersey market that many MSOs are in and trying to take advantage of. And so more on the brands here. If you wanted to pause to read, well, I'll just highlight a bit for them. The portfolio of brands is available at Air's retail stores, operating as Garden State Dispensary, which are in prime locations throughout New Jersey in the towns of Woodbridge, Union, and Eatontown. So it's 3 dispensary locations they have, as well as selling to third-party dispensaries throughout the state. And so Air got some cultivation, much like the other MSOs, and they're supplying all the new dispensaries, whether it's, I know there's only a small amount, but any of the social equity ones that would open if they'd pass safe banking and allow that to finally happen. Booker, talking about you and the people in your state, then Air, much like the other MSOs, would be able to supply those dispensaries as well. And so sharing this one from Young Justin, happy Friday. More on the Goodness Growth Holdings and Verano story, as Goodness Growth Holdings commences litigation against Verano for unlawful termination of arrangement agreement. So basically Goodness Growth Holdings saying that Verano has been untruthful or misleading in their statements, and for that reason they're taking action against them for doing that. And so more on this here if you wanted to pause to read, but this will only get more interesting with time, and just makes me really hope that the Columbia Care deal and Cresco deal can actually and will end up going through, and we'll probably find that out in November. And so with that, sharing this video from D-Sing, highlighting from CNBC Fast Money, tonight's video. And the one dude says the green thumb chart is bottoming. Let's hope this man knows what he's talking about. But this comes from October 19th. It's a clip about the joint partnership between Green Thumb Industries, a US MSO, and Circle K convenience stores that's going to kick off in Florida. And so their traders, Tim Seymour, Carter Beworth, and Bonwin. I don't know who these two people are, so take whatever they say with a grain of salt, but break down the strategic move into the retail space.
If you thought that gas prices were high,
on the pond.
wait to hear this.
Here we go.
Never go moving.
Cannabis company, Mr. Hahn, cannabis company Green Thumb is striking up a partnership with Circle K gas stations. Yes, you will be able to buy cannabis, in some cases, at a gas station. Tim, you're in the name, obviously more distribution. What do you think?
Are you in this class? I am today. I'm in this sector today, and I'm in this sector for the long run. And this is the kind of news that we've been waiting for. So Green Thumb has partnered with Circle K, who is the largest player in the state. And this is really the first strategic move on retail. And to that extent, if you're an investor in the cannabis space, and I am, and to be clear, Green Thumb is the second largest position in my cannabis ETF. I think this is a very important day. This is a day when also it puts a company who did not have a leading position in Florida into potentially the place to really increase not only the 10-store commitment, but to rapidly increase and aggressively increase in a potentially asset-light fashion. But it starts to begin to give you the idea of what cannabis could look like in a national retail scale. And that's something that I think when you consider Circle K, you consider the quality of the strategic, how they know how to position, how to promote, how to actually get buyers in very sophisticated, highly compliant industries. Think about what they do with tobacco. Think about what they do with alcohol. This is a case where partnering with cannabis, I think, is very good. And this is what you want if you're a cannabis company, and it's a smart acquisition or it's a smart deal. And I think it paves the road for other ones.
So the question is now, some gas stations sell sushi, which is never a good thing. If you go in and now you can get your pot, that might increase the bad sushi eating at the gas station. I don't know anything about Circle K. In any event, it's a heck of a chart. It's bottoming.
Yes.
I like it.
It is bottom.
So what's the ticker for Pepto?
He's not wrong.
I mean,
That's a good
that's
combo.
probably what you need.
You say the sector's bottoming? I'm curious.
Please elaborate.
I mean,
Gotcha.
the chart itself. We might even have it here. But a well-defined bearish to bullish reversal.
Yeah, Tim's been a leader in the space for some time. I also own the CNBS ETF. As you know, that's my preferred way to do it because I frankly don't have the time to do the due diligence on each of these individual companies. However, I do believe in the secular trend, and one way that I am playing it, or that I think that one should also look at playing it, is STZ, Constellation, which is a name that I've used in my final trade before, which I think gives you exposure without the specification or the specialization, but also gives you a bit more of a diversified approach if you aren't able to do the homework like my man, Mr. Seymour, is. If not, CNBS is probably also
Diversification, you're going with the red wine.
And so take from that video what you will as we move on to snippets from investment firms. This very interesting one. Thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing UBS on U.S. cannabis. And so I don't know much about UBS, but it seems like it's UBS Switzerland AG, probably a large multinational wealth manager, with a foothold in the U.S. and many other countries. But look at this tone shift. From August 31st, 2022, we kindly ask you to either sell or transfer these securities to another custodian because cannabis is bad. And then already October 2022, October 22nd, 2022, cannabis momentum too big to ignore. I shit you not. And so we've got this one here. It's all in one, which is great. So you've got the tone in August as of compared to the tone that we have right now. So very interesting nonetheless. You can pause to read. And then just wanted to share this last snippet from Todd Harrison down here, commenting their conclusion. We expect legalization measures to remain politically topical and will monitor the fast-growing industry. And so take from that what you will, but it seems like big institutions and wealth managers are starting to turn their head as this opportunity can finally become reality after all this time and waiting. So more on this link below if you want to check it out. Well, thank you, Jesse Redmond, for sharing what Needham has to say. Multi-state operator MSO third quarter 2022 preview and outlook. So I do believe this is new and something I haven't shared before, so I wanted to pass it on. We estimate operators with exposure to New Jersey were up at a low single-digit rate quarter over quarter in Q3, while operators without New Jersey exposure were flat to down. And so obviously having that exposure to New Jersey, better late than never, is going to help versus not having that exposure. Wholesale remains under pressure. Being more vertical will help margins during this tougher period. And so more on, I think, 3 stories here, or at least 2 mainly. U.S. industry revenue growth up 1% quarter over quarter and 6% year over year in the third quarter, as growth in new markets like New Jersey, Montana, and New Mexico was offset by inflationary pressure, slowing economic activity, and illicit market resilience to reduce consumer spending on cannabis. And so more about that, if you want to pause to read, while preservation of capital in terms of maintaining cash balances and generating cash flow is a critical deliverable for all U.S. cannabis operators in 2023 going forward. And so, of course, no doubt these companies have been through the ringer operating with both hands tied behind their backs thus far, and it's ultimately going to be up to those who are able to produce cash flow in the next year. And I think a lot of the Tier 1 MSOs will have no problem with that, but that's where it gets a little risky with some of the others. But lots can happen from now until then. And so a few more. Thank you, Dennis Ruda, for sharing. Weekly update by Roth. Brokers are getting much more bullish and confident on the cannabis sector in the U.S., eyeing institutional capital. And so we like these stories, and I just want to share them as they come. So weekly rehash, the need for an explicit safe harbor, what is safe banking, several paths to regulatory improvement outside of just safe, so you can pause to read for a bit more. While they also share an Exhibit 1 overview of cannabis scheduling, so again, a bit more of options, what can happen, what can we see going forward. We want descheduling, but we'll take an incremental step in the meantime if that means some sort of positive change for the cannabis industry as a whole, addressing the need for a new Cole memo and uplisting, or how uplisting may play out. And then a bit more, all from Roth Capital Partners here, full cannabis legalization roadmap. And so again, take that with a grain of salt, but seems like these institutions are getting a bit more optimistic. And so with that, when institutional capital steps into cannabis market, all the shorts will be wiped out, and it is difficult to foresee whether it would be 5x, 7x, or 10x in a matter of days. This is coming from him, not me, but that's Dennis Rudiv, who is seems to be a fund manager. We all saw October 6th, 45 minutes before market close. And so that is a bit of foreshadowing of what could happen. So again, plan accordingly for your own situation. We don't know when, but more information here. And I do believe this is from, Refinitiv Icon and Roth Capital Partners as well. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. I think this is a continuation of what we saw before. And then with that, just sharing this most updated valuation comp sheet for cannabis all across the board by Roth as well. So thanks, Dennis Rudiv, for sharing this. This one from Refinitiv Icon and Roth Capital Partners as well. So glad I can get this so I can share it with you. Might not be able to see it very well, but MSOs greater than 1 billion market cap, MSOs greater than 150 million market cap, MSOs with less than 150 market cap, so think Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, then Canadian LPs, ancillary services, global, retail, Cantech, Canna Finance, hemp CBD, and then looking at a bunch of metrics, including enterprise value divided by sales for this year and next year's estimates, enterprise value divided by EBITDA for this year and next year's estimates, sales growth for this year and next year's estimates, EBITDA growth or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization this year and then next year's estimates, while EBITDA margins this year and next year's estimates. And so last few stories, just highlighting one that I've shared before, but at what point do we start to question, okay, why haven't we ended cannabis prohibition, legalized it for medicinal across the country, and given people a safer, non-addictive alternative to opioids, especially when the opioid epidemic killed over 100,000 last year? Well, it's getting more blatantly obvious, and so we must be getting closer to that time. As 4 out of 5 mounting evidence supports the idea that medical cannabis can replace or at least reduce the use of opioids. And so study after study does highlight this. Obviously, that's why Big Pharma is getting scared. That's why they've been paying Schumer to delay. We know all this, and seems like we're at a pivotal moment. And so what do you think is going to happen? Let me know in the comments, but just love to hear that cannabis is the medicine we've always wanted it to be. And with that, just wanted to share this from CC Visuals. And so I don't want to say anything to jinx it. I just wanted to present his timely observation with you all, because obviously we'd like to see this as opposed to not. And what does it mean? We don't know. Only time will tell. But the momentum keeps building. The stage is set for the next few months, and I hope it gets very, very interesting. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.